Look at how he describes the mortality part in verse 14. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. This word mist is the word meaningless from the book of Ecclesiastes. The whole book of Ecclesiastes starts with meaningless or vanity. That word meaningless just means a fog or mist. And the idea of a mist is from the word Abel. You know, the name Abel is Havel, is related to this mist idea. What was Abel's life? It wasn't that he was meaningless. It was what? Temporary. It was short. That's what it means. So it's not Solomon or the writer, whoever you think wrote Ecclesiastes, you know, he's not saying that this is all meaningless. That's not his point. Because money is meaningful, right? It does matter. How do you know it matters, Andrew? Because I didn't have it at one point. So it really matters when you have it, right? So you can't say money is not meaningful, but it's temporary. It's a mist, right? Wisdom, he talks about in Ecclesiastes, it matters. It's meaningful, but it's temporary. Accomplishments, building up a kingdom, that matters, but it's temporary. Everything is temporary in light of eternity. That's what the writer of Ecclesiastes was saying. It's a vapor, it's a mist. And that's what James uses here. Your life is temporary. It's just a mist. Here in the morning, God by the afternoon. If you zoom out far enough, your life is only a split second, a nanosecond in God's eternal timeline. And what we do with our life is this. I'm going to do this, work really hard, do all this stuff here, so that this last section of this last part of my life, I can really be happy. So I'm going to be miserable. But for these 10, 20 years, I'm going to be happy. Then I'll really serve God and go on mission or whatever on this part. That's so dumb, isn't it? You're trading like 80% of your life to maybe have 20%. What if you die at this point? You get 0%. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, why are you assuming you'll get to that point? And why are you even waiting to get to this point to do the things you know you should be doing today? Now, I'm not saying quit your job, right? Don't do that. Don't get mad at me. But your perspective about your job really needs to change. Your perspective about your time really needs to change when you start to understand mortality. Because we don't know where we are on this timeline. That's the part we only know in hindsight. How do you know you'll ever get to this point? How do you know you'll ever get to see your kids get to this point? How do you know, like, oh, I'll spend time with the people that matter in my life after this? How do you know you'll even get to that? I'll share the gospel with that family member after this. How do you even know you'll have the opportunity? See, the only opportunity you know is right now, today. And that's why Jesus says, don't be anxious about tomorrow. Each day has enough troubles of them. That's what he's talking about. You count each day. This is all you know, what you have. So all the things God has wanted you to do and you put in the back burner, do it today. If you can't do it today, if you're alive tomorrow, thank the Lord and do it then. Because you don't even know if you're going to have tomorrow. There's so many things that planners, I don't know if you're a planner, I'm a planner. There's a lot of things in my mind I always plan, once I get to this point. But after my dad's death, I stopped becoming a planner and I stopped caring so much about reaching this point, just do it now. Just do it now. Like, and a lot of it is because of fear, at least for me. I'm always afraid I can't do it now because I have to be at this point to get credibility to then do these things. No, you don't need the credibility, just do it now. Like, you don't need to wait for permission from other people to do the things God has wanted you to do now. So if God wants you to share your faith now, share it now. You don't need to go to seminary. You don't have to be credible. Just love people now. Forgive people now. Reconcile now. Be about his kingdom now. Okay, once I save up enough money, then I'll do the things. No, do the things of God now. Because how do you even know that money is ever going to... Do you see what I'm saying? Or once my kids go to college, then I'll be serious. No, be serious now. How do you even know if you'll have that time later in college? What if you die or your kids die? Do you see what I'm saying? I know this sounds morbid, but it's actually wisdom in really thinking about mortality. We should be making plans for God's mission instead of our ambition. And the way to know how to manage your time is you do the things that God wants you to do, nothing more and nothing less. Does that mean you stop working? Not necessarily. But it does mean you have to know why you're working and for what purpose. Does that mean that you just, go out and travel the world? Or does it mean that you can't travel? No, that's not what it means. But it means, what is the purpose in everything that you're doing? Because once you count your time, you will be purposeful with the little time you have left. The times I'm very calculative is when the bank account gets smaller and smaller and smaller, right? But that's the reason we have to start thinking, the longer we live, our bank account is getting smaller time. And so the less money you have in your account, aren't you a little more careful now about each transaction? And so the older you are, the more you should be careful about what your transactions are with your time. That doesn't mean you say yes to everybody, by the way. Jesus didn't even do that. Jesus didn't spend equal time with every single person. He knew the urgency of his mission, and he said, I'm going to do my Father's will. I'm going to invest in these 12 people. Even amongst the 12, I'm going to invest in these 3, and that's it. I don't have time for the crowds all the time. In fact, he started some days, he just ran away from the disciples and went in prayer because that time with his Father was more important than the time with his disciples. You see, this will inform your time. Understanding your time according to God's plan will inform your priorities as well. Now, priority doesn't necessarily mean quantity of time, to be clear. So for example, if I say your first priority is God, that doesn't mean I'm saying you should quit your job and spend 10 hours reading the Bible. That's not what I'm saying. Priority doesn't mean quantity. Do you prioritize your kids above your job? Yes. But what do you spend more time at your work or at home with your kids? Probably work. Do you see what I'm saying? So priority doesn't mean quantity. It just means importance. What comes first? God, your relationship with God comes first. That's pretty clear. I hope I don't have to try to convince you of that. All right. Second, family. Now, when I say family, it's actually spouse first before your kids. The way one of my seminary professors said is that if your kids are drowning in one boat and your spouse is drowning in the other, you should save your spouse and let your kids drown. And they should know that too. That's really the priority. Your spouse comes first. Because you're not one flesh with your kids, you're one flesh with your spouse. And the less you prioritize your spouse, you actually harm your kids in the long run. How many of you guys have friends who came from broken homes? Has that not affected them? Because sometimes broken homes actually happens when the parents prioritize the kids, when you misprioritize. So spouse comes before the kids, always. Always. Because if you love your kids, you love your spouse more. The way they said is that the way the dad loves their sons is by loving their moms. Or the way the dad loves their daughters is they love their moms. Or, vice versa. You know what I mean? So you prioritize your relationship with God. Second, prioritize your relationship with your family. And this is biblical. 1 Timothy 3:5, it talks about one of the ways a person is, an elder or a pastor, you have to see how they manage their household. Because their household prioritized comes before the church. So here, this is what we call your job, vocation, or ministry. So when I say ministry, all of us have a ministry. Some people are vocational ministers in the church. Some people work a secular job, but all of us have a ministry. Does that make sense? Our ministry comes out either vocationally in the church or through your job. And so the third priority in your life after your relationship with God, or Christ, I should say here, after your relationship with your spouse and kids, and then kids, I should make that sub point here, is then your job and ministry, or even church attendance, church involvement. They all fall here. So if being at a certain church or a certain career is detrimenting and hurting your family, you should be willing to give that up. Even for me as a pastor, every time I interview at a church, I make it pretty clear. They always ask me, what's the ideal job? I was like, I don't have an ideal job. I want an ideal family. And if the church can help with helping me create the ideal family, this is a church for me. But I don't need a perfect ministry to that. You know what I'm saying? This is my goal. If you can help me with that, I'll be here as glad as possible. But if not, I'm out. Because it doesn't matter what the pay is and all these things. What matters is it goes back to priority. This is my priority. So if 1 million people get saved in my ministry and I neglected my kids, I failed. And if I'm just all about my family but I neglect my relationship with Christ, I failed. So it's just priority. It doesn't mean 12 hours here, 5 hours. That's not what it's talking about. Priorities in terms of your values in life. And so you're saying, okay, what comes after this? Everything else you want. Can I golf? Yes. Golf is fine. Sports is fine. After you've addressed these other priorities first. So it gets very easy to know what you should do with your time. Am I okay? Can I watch Sunday Night Football, Andrew? Well, I do. Well, how do you know when it's time to do? Have I addressed this? Yes. Have I addressed this? Have I addressed this? Then I can do whatever I want now. And there's freedom in that. But if I'm doing this at the expense of this or this or this, then there's a problem there. Then this is probably an epi-desire idol that's ruining everything else in my life. And so, how do you maximize each day? How do you maximize your time? How do you do things? You will only do what God wants you to do, nothing more, nothing less. Which means that in order to really address these first three, you're going to have to say no to a lot of other stuff in your life. So if there's like a job, oh, this is the greatest promotion, it just means I got to wait for my kids for the next 10 years of their life. You don't take it. But you don't know how much you're paying. You don't take it. Right? It becomes very easy, this matrix, when you start. Now, it's easy, but it's hard to do because sometimes something might whet your ego and make you feel important. Even though you know you probably shouldn't do it because it might come to detriment to your relationship with God. It might take away from the church. It might take you away from your family. But you're like, oh, but you don't know. This could be big for me. There's the time. Because at the end of your life, no one's going to ever regret, I should have worked more. I should have made more money. I haven't read a single article about that. It is always, I should have really cared about God and his kingdom. I should have really cared about my family. And maybe I should have done more for his kingdom and ministry and made an impact and not wasted 30 years with coworkers never talking about Christ at any point.